Have you ever wondered how far someone you love can go to deceive you? Have you ever felt that gut feeling that something was wrong, but chose to ignore the signs? This is the story of how I discovered that my own daughter had destroyed decades of my hard work in just a few months, and how it was my 11-year-old grandson who showed me the true meaning of forgiveness. If you've ever faced family betrayal, felt the weight of disappointment, or struggled to rebuild trust, this story will touch you deeply. I'm going to share every painful detail, every moment of despair, and how I found the strength to move forward when everything seemed lost. Stay until the end, because I'll reveal how a child taught me one of the most important lessons of my life. And remember, we're preparing a special giveaway when we reach more subscribers, with prizes for the best comments. If you subscribe now, you'll get notifications for all the important stories we'll share here. You know that feeling when you realize your entire life has been built on a lie? When you look back and see that all the signs were there, but you chose to ignore them? Well, that's my story. And before I finish it, you'll understand why sometimes the people we love most are capable of the greatest betrayals. If this has happened to you, or if you're afraid it might, you need to hear what I have to tell you. Hit that like button now, because this story is going to affect you in ways you didn't expect. My name is Robert, I'm 65 years old, and for 42 years of my life, I woke up every day at 5:30 in the morning to go to work. 42 years, can you imagine that? I'd get up in the dark, drink my black coffee, kiss my wife Margaret on the forehead while she was still sleeping, and leave the house before the sun came up. I worked as a supervisor at an automotive parts factory in Detroit. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was honest. Every dollar I earned with sweat. Margaret died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Took her in 6 months, from diagnosis to funeral. When she was gone, I felt like half of me had been ripped away. 40 years of marriage, and suddenly I was alone in a house that seemed too big, too quiet. But I had our daughter, Sarah. Sarah had always been our special girl. Smart, charismatic, full of dreams. She married a good guy, David, and gave me the most precious gift a man can have, my grandson, Tommy. Tommy is 11 now. Red hair like his mother's, freckles on his nose, and those green eyes that sparkle when he smiles. He's my light, you know. After Margaret died, Tommy became my reason to keep going. Every Friday he'd sleep over at my house. We'd watch old movies. I'd teach him to fish at the lake behind the house. And he'd tell me about school, about friends, about his dreams of being an astronaut or baseball player, depending on the week. Sarah had always been a bit financially unstable. She and David never really managed to get established. He works as an electrician. She does freelance graphic design work when she can get clients. They rent a small house across town, basically live paycheck to paycheck. I always helped when I could, without making a big deal about it. Some bills here, school supplies for Tommy there, gas money when they needed it. It was never much, but I knew it made a difference. What I didn't know was that Sarah had started gambling online. It started small, she told me later. A few dollars on digital poker, small sports bets. She told herself it was just entertainment, like going to the movies or dining out. But you know how it is with addiction, don't you? It never stays small for long. The bets kept getting bigger. $5 became 20. 20 became 50. And when you lose, you want to win it back. It's a cycle that swallows you without you even realizing it. I started noticing changes in Sarah around last August. She seemed nervous whenever I saw her, restless. She was constantly checking her phone, like she was waiting for an important message. When I'd ask if everything was okay, she'd give that forced smile and say it was just work, that she was stressed about some projects. David seemed worried too. Once, when I went to pick up Tommy for our weekend, I caught him in the kitchen looking at some bills on the table with a grim expression. When he saw me, he quickly gathered the papers and changed the subject. "How are you, Bob? Tommy's almost ready." But I saw the tension in his face, the way his shoulders were hunched, like he was carrying an invisible weight. In September, Sarah came to visit me on a Tuesday night. This was unusual. She never came during weekdays. She was always busy. When I opened the door, she looked pale with deep dark circles under her eyes. "Hi, Dad. Can we talk?" We sat in the living room, on the same couch where Margaret and I used to watch our shows. Sarah kept fidgeting with her hands, avoiding my gaze. "Dad, we're going through a tough time financially." It wasn't the first time she'd asked me for help, so I didn't think much of it. "How much do you need, sweetheart?" $2,000. She said it quickly, like it was painful to say the words. "It's for rent and some overdue bills. David lost some jobs last month and my clients are taking forever to pay." $2,000 was a considerable amount, but I had it. After Margaret's death, I had sold her car and made some extra savings. Plus, my retirement and her life insurance had left me in a stable financial situation. Not rich, but comfortable. "Of course, Sarah. You know you can always count on me." The relief on her face was immediate and intense. She got up and hugged me tight. "Thank you, Dad. I promise I'll pay you back as soon as things get better." I went to my office and wrote a check. Sarah folded it carefully and put it in her purse, like it was something precious. Before leaving, she turned and looked at me with a strange expression. "Dad, you love me, don't you? No matter what." The question caught me by surprise. "Of course I love you, Sarah. You're my daughter. Nothing will change that." She nodded, but there was something in her eyes that I couldn't decipher at the time. Now I know it was guilt. October passed quietly. Sarah seemed a bit better, less tense. Tommy kept coming to spend weekends with me, and he seemed normal, playful as always. But at the end of October, she came back. "Dad, I know this is a lot to ask, but..." She paused, took a deep breath. "I need $3,000 more dollars." This time I hesitated. "Sarah, what's going on? $5,000 in 2 months is a lot of money." "David had to go to the hospital," she said quickly. "Back problems from work. We didn't have adequate health insurance and the medical bills." She started crying. "Dad, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do." As a father, seeing your daughter cry desperately breaks something inside you. I didn't question further. I wrote another check, and Sarah left my house with $3,000 more from my 55 years of savings. November arrived cold and grey. I was starting to worry seriously. It wasn't just the money, although $8,000 in 3 months was a significant sum for me. It was Sarah's behavior. She seemed to be getting worse, not better, thinner, more nervous, more distant. And Tommy started making strange comments. "Grandpa, why does Mom stay up late on the computer?" he asked one Friday night while we were putting together a puzzle on the kitchen table. "She's working, Tommy. Your mother works hard to take care of you guys." "But she's not working," Tommy said with that brutal honesty that only children have. "She just keeps clicking on colorful games on the screen. And sometimes she yells at the computer." I felt a chill in my stomach, but I didn't want to alarm the boy. "Sometimes adults play games to relax after work." "She doesn't look relaxed," Tommy said, turning his attention back to the puzzle. "She looks angry, and Dad got mad at her the other day. They were arguing about money." That night, after Tommy went to bed, I stayed up late thinking. His comments, combined with Sarah's constant requests for money, started forming a worrying pattern in my mind. But I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe that my daughter was lying to me. In December, 3 weeks before Christmas, Sarah showed up at my door for the 3rd time. This time, she didn't even try to come up with an elaborate excuse. "Dad, I need $5,000. Her words came out in a desperate rush. "Sarah, stop," I said, firmer than I intended. "You need to tell me what's really going on." For a moment, I thought she was going to break down and tell me the truth. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Her hands were shaking. It's Christmas, Dad. I want Tommy to have a special Christmas, and David is out of work again. Please, I promise this will be the last time." I should have said no, should have insisted on the truth. But it was almost Christmas, and the thought of Tommy not having presents broke my heart. I wrote another check, the 4th in 4 months, $13,000. More than a quarter of my savings had disappeared. "This really needs to be the last time, Sarah," I said, as I handed her the check. "I'm starting to worry about you guys." She nodded vigorously, took the check and left quickly, barely looking at me. That night I called David. David, how are you? Sarah told me you're having back problems. There was silence on the other end of the line, a silence that was too long. Bob, my back is fine. I don't know what Sarah told you, but I never went to the hospital. It was like the ground had disappeared from under my feet. If you've ever felt your stomach drop when you realize someone you trust is blatantly lying to your face, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. That phone call with David changed everything. If you're wondering how I could have been so naive, comment down below, because believe me, I asked myself the same thing thousands of times. And if you want to know how far this lie went, you're not prepared for what comes next. After I hung up the phone, I sat in the dark of my living room for almost 2 hours, just sitting, processing what David had told me. My daughter had lied directly to my face, not once, but several times, and lied about serious things, about money, about her husband's health. I tried to find explanations. Maybe David was hiding something from me so I wouldn't worry. Maybe Sarah had exaggerated about his condition. Maybe, but deep down I knew. Tommy's comments about Sarah playing games on the computer, her constant nervousness, the increasing amounts of money, it all made sense now. My daughter had a gambling problem. I didn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, remembering all the times Margaret had warned me about being too permissive with Sarah. You love her so much that sometimes you forget to be a father, she used to say. Margaret was always firmer, more practical. If she were alive, this never would have happened. She would have seen the signs long before I did. The next morning, I called Sarah. My voice must have sounded different because she immediately got defensive. Hi, Dad. Is something wrong? Sarah, we need to talk. In person. About what? You know about what? There was a long pause. Dad, I'm busy today. Tommy has baseball practice and I have to... Sarah! My voice came out harder than I intended. I need you to come here now. Another pause. Okay, I'll be there in an hour. She arrived 40 minutes later. When I opened the door, Sarah completely avoided my gaze. She came in, sat on the edge of the couch and kept playing with her purse strap. I talked to David last night, I said without beating around the bush. The color drained from her face instantly. What did he say? He told me he never went to the hospital, that he doesn't have back problems. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands started visibly shaking. He lied to you, Dad. He's ashamed to admit he's sick. Sarah, stop. My voice came out tired, disappointed. Just stop with the lies. It was like something inside her broke. She collapsed into tears, but it wasn't ordinary crying. It was the kind of crying that comes from a deep place of despair and shame. Violent sobs that shook her entire body. Dad, I messed everything up. Tell me the truth, Sarah. All of it. Between tears and sobs, the real story started coming out. It began with small bets on online poker sites, then progressed to sports betting, virtual casinos, even cryptocurrencies. In the last 8 months, she had lost not only the $13,000 I had given her, but also hers and David's savings, money borrowed from friends, and even some bills she was supposed to have paid. How much? I asked when she finished. How much what? How much did you lose in total? She couldn't look me in the eyes. $42,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $42,000. That was more than many people made in an entire year. And David knows? He found out last week. Her voice was a whisper. He threatened to leave me, said he'll ask for custody of Tommy if I don't stop. And did you stop? Her silence was the answer. Sarah, you need help. Professional help. I know, Dad, but I don't have money for treatment, and David said he won't pay for it. I felt angry at David for a second, but then realized he was probably as desperate and betrayed as I felt. How much more do you need? She looked at me with hope in her eyes. If I can get $5,000, I can pay off the most urgent debts, and I promise I'll seek help. No, the word came out of my mouth before I had even fully processed it. Dad? I said no, Sarah. I'm not giving you more money to feed your addiction. She was in shock. In her entire life, I had never refused help when she asked for it. But Dad, if I don't pay these debts, then you'll have to find another way. A real job. Sell some things, get a loan from the bank, anything except using me like an ATM. Sarah stood up abruptly. You don't understand. These people, they're not normal people to owe money to. What people? Some of the bets I made weren't on regulated sites. I felt my blood freeze. Sarah, are you telling me you owe money to loan sharks? They're not exactly loan sharks. They're more like businessmen who make loans to gamblers. Jesus Christ, Sarah. Do you know what you've done? She started crying again. Dad, please, I need your help. I don't have anyone else. Part of me wanted to write another check, hug her, and say everything would be okay. But I knew that if I did that, I would just be prolonging the problem. I would be enabling her to continue destroying herself. No, Sarah, this time you'll have to solve it yourself. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and despair I had never seen before. You're abandoning me when I need you most. I'm saving you, even if you can't see it now. Sarah left my house, slamming the door. It was the first time in her life she had left my house angry at me. I sat on the couch and cried. I cried for my daughter, for the situation she had gotten herself into, for my own naivety, and for Margaret's absence, who would have known exactly what to do. For the next 2 weeks, Sarah didn't call me once. Tommy didn't come for the weekend either, which was unprecedented. I called David to find out how the situation was. Bob, she's worse. His voice sounded tired, defeated. She's not eating properly, barely sleeping. She stays on the computer until 3 in the morning, gambling. And Tommy is physically fine, but he notices something's wrong. Yesterday he asked me if Mum was sick. David, you need to do something. Maybe hospitalization. With what money, Bob? She spent everything we had. I'm working 12 hours a day just to pay rent and buy food. And what about the people she owes money to? There was a long silence. They've called a few times, made it clear they're not patient. David, you need to get Tommy out of that house. Where to? I don't have family here, and I can't afford a place to stay. Bring him here. Sarah will never agree. Sarah doesn't have a choice. If she doesn't check herself into treatment, I'm going to court to get temporary custody of my grandson. The next morning, David showed up at my door with Tommy and a small suitcase. Hi, Grandpa, Tommy said, but his usual voice was sad, confused. Hi, champ. How about we stay together for a few days? David explained that he had told Sarah he was taking Tommy to spend a few days with me while she recovered. Sarah had agreed, probably because she knew she wasn't in any condition to take care of a child. That night, after Tommy went to bed, David and I talked on the porch. Bob, I don't know what to do anymore. I love Sarah, but she's not the woman I married anymore. Have you thought about leaving her? Every day. But what about Tommy? How do I explain to him that his mother is sick in a way that might never be completely cured? I didn't have an answer for him. Tommy stayed with me for a week. It was a strange and painful week. He was an intelligent and perceptive child, and knew something serious was happening. He didn't ask many questions, but I could see the worry in his eyes. On Thursday of that week, Sarah showed up at my door. She was unrecognizable. She had lost at least 20 pounds. Her hair was dirty and disheveled, and there were deep, dark circles under her eyes. She looked like someone in withdrawal. Where's my son? At school. I want him back. Sarah, look at yourself. Do you think you're in any condition to take care of a child? I'm his mother. Then act like one. She entered my house uninvited and threw herself on the couch. Dad, I tried to stop. I swear I tried, but every time I don't gamble, I feel like I can't breathe. You need professional help. I don't have money for that. I'll pay for treatment. She looked at me with surprise. You would pay? Yes, but with conditions. You know that feeling when you realize you need to be tougher with someone you love because compassion isn't working? That's exactly what I was feeling. If you've ever had to make difficult decisions with people you love, you'll understand every word I'm about to say. And for those who think I was too harsh, wait until you hear what happened next. Leave a comment about how you would handle this situation. The conditions I presented to Sarah that day were the hardest I'd ever had to establish in my life. She was sitting on my couch, looking like a shadow of the vibrant daughter I had raised, expecting me to save her once again. But this time would be different. First condition, I said, sitting in the chair across from her, you're going to a rehabilitation clinic. Not a psychologist once a week, a real clinic with inpatient treatment. Sarah nodded quickly. Yes, anything. Second condition, Tommy stays with me during your entire treatment. Dad, it's non-negotiable, Sarah. You lost the right to take care of him when you chose to gamble away his food money. She lowered her head, knowing I was right. Third condition, you give me complete access to your finances, bank accounts, cards, everything, and you won't touch a penny without my approval. Isn't that a bit extreme? You lost $42,000 in less than a year, Sarah. Extreme is an understatement. And the fourth condition, you're going to tell Tommy what really happened, in an age-appropriate way, but the truth. Sarah started crying. Dad, he'll hate me, maybe, but he deserves to know the truth, and you need to take responsibility for what you did. That afternoon, I researched rehabilitation clinics specialized in gambling addiction. Most cost between $15,000 to $20,000 for a 3-month treatment. It was an amount I could afford, but it would consume a large part of my remaining savings. I found a well-reviewed clinic about 2 hours away in Bloomfield Hills. I called and explained the situation. They had an opening available for the following week, but they wanted Sarah to be evaluated first. When Sarah came to pick up Tommy that afternoon, she could barely look at him. Tommy looked at her with that direct way children have, studying her face. Mom, are you okay? You look sick. Sarah took a deep breath. Tommy, Mom needs to talk to you about something important. The three of us sat in the living room. Sarah started crying before she even spoke. Tommy, you know how sometimes you really want something, and even though you know you shouldn't, you do it anyway. Tommy nodded. Like when I took the cookie before dinner, even though you said not to. It's kind of like that, but much more serious. Mum did something she shouldn't have done, and because of that, our family is having problems. Sarah explained, as simply as possible, that she had spent money on computer games, and that now they had debts. She didn't go into details about loan sharks or the total amount, but she was honest about the fact that she had lied and had lost a lot of money. Tommy listened to everything in silence. When Sarah finished, he was quiet for a long time, processing the information. Mom, is that why you and Dad were fighting? Yes. And is that why I came to stay with Grandpa? Yes. Are you going to get better? Sarah looked at me, then back at Tommy. I'm going to try very hard to get better, but I need to go to a special place where doctors can help me. Like a hospital. Something like that, yes. Tommy was quiet for another moment. Then, with that innocent wisdom that only children possess, he said something that broke my heart. Mom, I forgive you, but you have to promise me you won't lie anymore. Sarah burst into tears and hugged him tight. I promise, baby, I promise. The next week, I drove Sarah to the Bloomfield Hills Clinic. It was a beautiful facility with well-maintained gardens and a peaceful atmosphere. But I knew that what awaited Sarah inside would be anything but peaceful. During the intake process, Sarah had to fill out extensive forms about her gambling history, her debts, and her mental state. The counselor, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Patricia Collins, spoke with both of us. Mr. Johnson, I want you to understand that gambling addiction recovery is a long process. Even after Sarah completes our 3-month program, she'll need ongoing support and monitoring. What are her chances? I asked. That depends largely on her commitment to recovery and her support system. The fact that she has you and her son as motivation is positive, but I won't lie to you. The relapse rate is high. When it came time to say goodbye, Sarah clung to me like a little girl. Dad, what if I can't do this? You can, and you will, because Tommy needs his mother back and I need my daughter back. I'm so sorry for everything. I know you are. Now make it right. Driving home alone, I felt a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that Sarah would finally get the help she needed, and fear that it might be too late. That evening, Tommy and I had dinner together, just the two of us. He seemed thoughtful, more mature than his 11 years. Grandpa, is Mom going to be okay? I hope so, Tommy. I really hope so. She looked so sad when she was lying to us. His observation struck me. Even as a child, he had noticed that Sarah's deception was hurting her too. People sometimes make bad choices when they're in pain. Tommy, your mom wasn't lying because she wanted to hurt us. She was lying because she was ashamed and scared. But lying just made everything worse. Yes, it did. The first few weeks with Tommy were an adjustment for both of us. He was grieving in his own way, not just for his mother's absence, but for the loss of the family stability he had known. Some nights I heard him crying quietly in his room. When I go check on him, he'd wipe his tears and say he was fine, but I could see the pain in his young eyes. I enrolled him in a new school closer to my house and tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible. We established routines, breakfast together, I'd walk him to school, pick him up in the afternoon, homework time, dinner, and then some activity together before bed. David visited twice a week. The first few visits were awkward. He seemed guilty about leaving Tommy with me, even though it was clearly the best option. "Bob, I can't thank you enough for this," he said one evening after Tommy had gone to bed. "He's my grandson, David. This is where he belongs right now. Have you heard from Sarah? The clinic allows one phone call per week. She sounds different. Clearer, but also more fragile, if that makes sense. Do you think she'll really get better this time? I don't know, but this is her best chance." 3 weeks into Sarah's treatment, I received a call from Dr. Collins. "Mr. Johnson, I wanted to update you on Sarah's progress. She's been very cooperative with individual therapy and group sessions. However, we've discovered that her gambling addiction is more severe than initially assessed." "What do you mean?" "The debt amount she disclosed to you wasn't complete. We've been working with her to get a full financial picture, and the total she owes is closer to $68,000. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. 68,000. I'm afraid so. Some of the debts are to individuals who have been persistent in their collection efforts." "Do you mean threatening?" "Sarah has received several intimidating phone calls and messages. We think it's best if she stays here for the full 4-month program instead of 3, and we strongly recommend that Tommy and you consider relocating temporarily." "Relocating? Are you saying we're in danger?" "I'm saying it's a precaution worth taking. These people know where Sarah lives, and they know about her family." That night I sat Tommy down for another difficult conversation. "Tommy, we might need to go on a little adventure for a while." "What kind of adventure?" "We might need to stay somewhere else for a few months. Maybe visit your great-aunt Linda in Florida." Tommy looked at me with those perceptive green eyes. "Is this because of Mum's problem?" I nodded. "Some people are angry at your mum because of the money she owes them. It's probably safer if we're not here for a while." "Are we going to be okay, Grandpa?" "Yes, Tommy, we're going to be okay, I promise." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them myself. Have you ever felt like you were living in a nightmare that kept getting worse every time you thought it couldn't get any darker? That's exactly where I found myself. If you think you know how bad this situation got, trust me, you have no idea. And if you're wondering how an 11-year-old boy could teach a grown man about forgiveness in the middle of all this chaos, keep listening, because Tommy was about to show me something extraordinary. Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about this story. The decision to leave Detroit wasn't easy, but when Dr. Collins called me again 2 days later, it became necessary. "Mr. Johnson, 2 men came to Sarah's house yesterday asking for her. When David told them she wasn't there, they made it clear they knew about Tommy and you." My blood ran cold. "They mentioned us by name? They mentioned an old man and a kid with red hair. David called us immediately and we contacted the police. They're treating it as harassment, but there's not much they can do unless these men actually commit a crime." "What did they want?" "Money, of course. But they also wanted to send a message. These aren't just random creditors, Mr. Johnson. Some of these people Sarah borrowed from operate outside normal legal channels." That same day, I called my sister Linda in Tampa. Linda was 2 years younger than me, a retired teacher who lived alone in a quiet neighborhood near the beach. I hadn't talked to her in months, but when I explained the situation, she didn't hesitate. "Bobby, bring that boy down here right now. You know you're always welcome." Packing up our lives into 2 suitcases was surreal. I was 65 years old, and I was running away from home like some kind of fugitive. But every time I looked at Tommy, I knew it was the right decision. His safety was more important than my pride or comfort. Tommy took the news better than I expected. At 11, he still saw moving to Florida as an adventure rather than an escape. "Will there be palm trees, Grandpa?" "Lots of them. And can we go to the beach?" "Every day if you want to." The drive to Tampa took us 2 days. We stopped at a motel in Georgia, and that night, Tommy asked the question I'd been dreading. "Grandpa, are the bad people Mom owes money to going to hurt us?" I looked at this brave little boy, trying to process adult problems that no child child should have to think about, and I decided to be honest. I don't think so, Tommy. But sometimes when adults make bad choices, it affects the people they love. We're being careful, not because we're scared, but because we're smart. Is Mom safe where she is? Yes, the doctors are taking good care of her. Will we ever go home? That question broke my heart because I didn't have an answer. I don't know, buddy. But wherever we are, as long as we're together, we'll be okay. Linda's house was a small, cheerful place with a screened porch and a view of Tampa Bay from the backyard. She welcomed us with the kind of southern hospitality that makes you feel instantly at home, despite the circumstances. "Well, look at this handsome young man," she said, giving Tommy a hug. "I haven't seen you since you were 7 years old. You've grown so tall." That first week in Tampa was a weird mixture of vacation and exile. Tommy loved the beach, the warm weather, and the novelty of everything. Linda doted on him, taking him to local museums, teaching him to collect shells, and spoiling him with ice cream and attention. But I could see the worry in his eyes when he thought no one was looking. At night, he'd ask about his mom, about his dad, about when we could go home. I tried to give him hope while managing my own growing despair about our situation. Sarah called every Sunday, as the clinic allowed. The conversations were difficult. She sounded more clear-headed than she had in months, but also fragile and guilty. "Dad, Dr. Collins told me about the men who came to the house. I'm so sorry you and Tommy had to leave because of my mistakes. Don't worry about us. Focus on getting better. Is Tommy angry at me?" I looked across the room, where Tommy was building a sandcastle with Linda on the porch. "He asks about you every day. He misses you, but he's not angry. I don't deserve him." "No, you don't. But he loves you anyway. Don't waste that gift." 3 weeks into our stay in Tampa, David called with more bad news. "Bob, they came back. This time they broke a window and left a note." "What did the note say?" "It said Sarah has 30 days to contact them when she gets out, or they'll expand their collection methods to family members." "Did you call the police?" "Of course. They took a report but said unless we can identify who did it, there's not much they can do." "Bob, I'm scared. What if they find out where you and Tommy are?" "They won't. We're being careful." But I wasn't as confident as I sounded. That night I couldn't sleep, thinking about how Sarah's addiction had put all of us in danger. The next morning, Tommy found me sitting on the porch at dawn, drinking coffee and staring at the water. "You look sad, Grandpa." "Just thinking, buddy. About Mom. About a lot of things." Tommy sat down next to me. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I've been thinking about forgiveness." The word surprised me. Forgiveness? At Sunday school, before we moved here, our teacher told us that forgiveness doesn't mean what someone did was okay. It means you're not going to let what they did keep hurting you. I looked at this 11-year-old boy, amazed by his insight. "That's very wise, Tommy. I've been mad at Mom for lying to us and for making us have to leave home. But being mad just makes me feel bad inside. It doesn't change anything that happened. So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to forgive her, not because what she did was okay, but because I don't want to be mad anymore." In that moment, Tommy taught me something profound that I'd forgotten in all my anger and disappointment with Sarah. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing her behavior. It was about freeing ourselves from the burden of resentment. "You know what, Tommy? I think you're right. Will you forgive her too, Grandpa?" "I'm going to try." That afternoon, I called Dr. Collins and asked about Sarah's progress. "She's doing much better, Mr. Johnson. The individual therapy has been very effective, and she's been honest about her debts and the people she owes money to. We're working with a financial counselor to see if we can negotiate payment plans with some of her creditors, the legitimate ones anyway. And the others? That's more complicated. We're recommending she work with a lawyer who specializes in these situations when she's discharged." "How much longer does she need to stay?" "At least 2 more months, maybe 3. We want to make sure she has strong coping mechanisms in place before she faces the real world again." The weeks in Tampa started to blur together. Tommy enrolled in a local school, made a few friends, and began to seem more like his old self. But I could tell he was homesick, especially for his father. David drove down to visit us twice. The first visit was awkward. He seemed exhausted, worn down by months of stress and uncertainty. But by the second visit, a month later, he seemed more hopeful. "Sarah sounds different on the phone," he told me while Tommy was at the beach with Linda. "More like herself, but also more grown up, if that makes sense." Do you think you can forgive her? David was quiet for a long time. I love her, Bob. I never stopped loving her. But I don't know if I can trust her again. And without trust, maybe trust is something you build back slowly. Maybe. But what about the people she owes money to? Even if she gets clean, that problem doesn't just go away. He was right, and we both knew it. 2 months into our stay in Florida, I got a call that changed everything. But it wasn't from Dr. Collins or David. It was from a lawyer named Michael Harrison in Detroit. Mr. Johnson, I represent your daughter Sarah. Doctor, Collins gave me your number. Is Sarah okay? She's fine, but I have some information about her creditors that you need to know. Some of the people she owes money to are under federal investigation for racketeering and illegal gambling operations. What does that mean for Sarah? It means she might be able to provide testimony that could help the FBI's case. In exchange, she could potentially enter witness protection, or at least get immunity from prosecution for her own involvement. Prosecution? Sarah could go to jail. The amounts she borrowed and the method she used to obtain some of the funds could technically constitute fraud, but if she cooperates with the federal investigation, those charges would likely be dropped. My head was spinning. What about the money she owes? If these operations are shut down through the investigation, the debts become uncollectible. Essentially, they'd be forgiven. And the people who threatened us? If they're arrested as part of this operation, that threat goes away. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of real hope. That night, I sat Tommy down and explained, in the simplest terms possible, that his mom might be able to help the police catch some bad people, and that if she did, we might be able to go home soon. Will Mom get in trouble for helping the police? No, buddy. Actually, it might help her stay out of trouble. And then we can all be a family again. I looked at his hopeful face and felt my heart break a little. I don't know what's going to happen with your mom and dad, Tommy, but whatever happens, you'll always have people who love you. I know, he said with that simple confidence that children have, and I still want to forgive Mom, even if she has to help catch bad guys. 3 weeks later, Sarah was released from the clinic into FBI custody, not as a prisoner, but as a cooperating witness. The federal agents drove her directly to Tampa to meet with us before she gave her testimony. When Sarah walked into Linda's living room, I barely recognized her. She had gained back the weight she'd lost. Her hair was clean and styled, and her eyes were clear. But more than that, she carried herself differently, with a humility and awareness that hadn't been there before. Tommy ran to her and hugged her tight. "Mom, I missed you so much." Sarah started crying immediately. "Oh, Tommy, I missed you too, every single day. Mom, I have something important to tell you." Sarah knelt down to his level. "What's that, sweetheart? I forgive you for lying to us and for making us have to move away. I don't like what you did, but I love you, and I don't want to be mad anymore." Sarah looked at me over Tommy's head with tears streaming down her face. In that moment, I saw the daughter I had raised, not the desperate, lying stranger she had become, but the kind, intelligent woman who had somehow lost her way. "Tommy," she said, her voice breaking, "that's the most grown-up thing anyone has ever said to me. Thank you." Then she looked at me. "Dad, can you ever forgive me?" I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the stolen money, the fear, the exile from our home. But I also thought about Tommy's words about forgiveness, not meaning that what someone did was okay, but that you weren't going to let it keep hurting you. I already have, Sarah, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. I know, and I'm ready to face them. You know what's amazing about children? They can teach us the most profound lessons about life when we're not even looking for them. If you've ever wondered what real forgiveness looks like, what Tommy did next will absolutely blow your mind. This is where the story takes a turn that I never saw coming, and I guarantee you won't either. Make sure you're subscribed, because the lesson this 11-year-old boy taught me about redemption is something every parent and grandparent needs to hear. The FBI agents who accompanied Sarah were professional but kind. Agent Martinez, a woman about Sarah's age, explained the situation to all of us. Sarah has been extremely cooperative. Her testimony and the records she's provided have given us crucial information about a gambling operation that's been exploiting people for years. What happens now? I asked. Sarah will testify before a grand jury next week. After that, assuming the indictments come down as expected, the immediate threat to your family should be eliminated. And Sarah? No charges will be filed against her. In fact, the prosecutor is recommending her for a victim assistance program since and she was clearly being exploited by these operators. That evening, after the agents had left for their hotel, we sat on Linda's porch as a family for the first time in months. Tommy was between Sarah and me on the porch swing, chattering about school, his new friends, and all the things he wanted to show his mum. But then he got serious. "Mum, why did you start gambling?" Sarah looked at me, then back at Tommy. I could see her weighing how much truth an 11-year-old could handle. After Grandma Margaret died, I felt really sad all the time. And when I gambled, for a little while I didn't feel sad. I felt excited and hopeful. But it didn't really make you not sad, did it? No, sweetie. It actually made me much sadder. And it hurt other people too. Will you ever gamble again? I learned a lot at the treatment center about my problem. I have tools now to help me when I feel like gambling. But Tommy, I'll probably always be someone who can't gamble safely, just like some people can't drink alcohol safely. Tommy nodded solemnly. So it's like you're allergic to gambling. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in over a year. That's actually a perfect way to describe it. The next morning, Sarah had to leave with the FBI agents to prepare for her testimony. Before she left, she sat down with Tommy one more time. "Tommy, I want you to know that everything that happened was my fault, not Dad's fault, not Grandpa's fault, not your fault, mine. And I want you to know that even when I was sick and making bad choices, I never stopped loving you. I know, Mom. And I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure I never put our family in danger again." "Mom." "Yes. Are you and Dad going to get divorced?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Sarah looked at me helplessly. "I don't know, sweetheart. Dad and I have a lot to work through, but no matter what happens between us, we both love you more than anything in the world. Will I still get to live with both of you sometimes? Always, no matter what." After Sarah left, Tommy was quieter than usual. That night, he asked if he could call his dad. "Dad," I heard him say, "Mom looks better. She doesn't look scared anymore." I couldn't hear David's response, but Tommy continued, "Dad, I think you should forgive Mom too. I know she hurt us, but holding on to being mad just makes us sad." There was a long pause. "I know you need time to think about it, but Dad, I love you both and I want our family to be okay again." Udu, when Tommy handed me the phone, David's voice was thick with emotion. "Bob, how did we get so lucky to have that kid?" "I ask myself that question every day. He's right, you know, about forgiveness. I've been carrying around so much anger and it's not helping anyone. Anger is easier than grief sometimes." "What do you mean?" "I think we're both grieving the family we thought we had, the Sarah we thought we knew. Anger feels stronger than sadness. But the Sarah who lied to us and the Sarah who just visited you, they're the same person, aren't they?" "Yes. People are complicated, David. They can be both things at once." The grand jury indictments came down 2 weeks later. 12 people were arrested in connection with the illegal gambling operation, including the 2 men who had threatened our family. The local news ran a story about it, calling it one of the largest illegal gambling busts in Detroit history. Sarah's testimony was crucial to the prosecution's case, and her cooperation was noted by the judge. More importantly, all the debts she owed to the illegal operation were voided as part of the criminal proceeding. We were finally free to go home. The drive back to Detroit was very different from our escape to Florida. Tommy chattered excitedly about seeing his room again, his friends, his father, but I felt nervous. Florida had become our safe haven, and returning to the scene of so much trauma felt daunting. When we pulled into my driveway, David was waiting for us. He hugged Tommy first, lifting him off his feet and spinning him around. Then he hugged me. "Welcome home, Bob. It's good to be back." That night, the 3 of us, David, Tommy and I, sat in my living room and talked about the future. "I found a therapist who specializes in addiction and family recovery," David said. "Sarah's going to start seeing her twice a week when she gets back from testifying. And what about you two? We're going to try couples counseling. I love her, Bob, but trust is going to take time. What about living arrangements? Sarah's going to stay in a sober living house for a while. It's a place where people in recovery live together and support each other. She'll have supervised visits with Tommy until we're all confident she's stable." Tommy had been listening quietly. "Dad, does that mean you're not getting divorced?" "We're going to try to work things out, son, but it's going to take time, and we might not succeed. Are you okay with that?" Tommy was quiet for a moment. "I just want everyone to be honest with each other, even when the truth is hard." David and I looked at each other. This kid continued to amaze us. A month later, Sarah returned from her final testimony. The trial wouldn't happen for several months, but her part was done. The illegal gambling operation was shut down permanently, and several people who had been victimized by it were able to get help. Sarah's first visit with Tommy after her return was at my house, with David present. She looked different again, more confident but also more careful. She'd learned not to make promises she might not be able to keep. "How was school today?" she asked Tommy. "Good. I got an A on my math test." "That's wonderful. You always were good at math." "And, Mum, can I ask you something?" "Always. Are you happy now?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I'm healthier now, and I'm hopeful. Happiness is something I have to work on every day, like practicing piano." "Exactly like practicing piano." Over the following months, we all learned new ways of being a family. Sarah moved from the sober living house to her own small apartment. She got a steady job doing graphic design for a marketing company. She attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week and saw her therapist twice a week. Tommy spent weekends with me, some evenings with his mom, and most nights with his dad. It wasn't the nuclear family structure we'd had before, but it was honest, and it was stable. The most remarkable thing was watching Tommy navigate this new reality. He never tried to manipulate the situation or play one adult against another. He simply accepted that his family looked different now, and that was okay. Have you ever watched a child handle a difficult situation with more grace and wisdom than the adults around them? That's exactly what Tommy continued to do. And what he taught us next about second chances will challenge everything you think you know about rebuilding trust. If you're dealing with family addiction, betrayal, or trying to rebuild relationships after they've been broken, pay close attention to this part. And please share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. 6 months after Sarah's return, something beautiful happened. Tommy asked if he could plan a family dinner for all of us. "All of us?" Sarah asked. "You, Dad, Grandpa, and me. Like a real family dinner." David and Sarah exchanged a look. They'd been making progress in counseling, but they weren't back together yet. They were still figuring out how to trust each other again. "Are you sure that's a good idea, buddy?" David asked gently. "I think it's time," Tommy said, with that matter-of-fact tone he'd developed when talking about serious things. "We're all part of each other's lives now. We should eat dinner together sometimes." So the following Saturday, we gathered at my house. Sarah brought a homemade lasagna. She'd been learning to cook as part of rebuilding her daily routines. David brought garlic bread. I made a salad. Tommy set the table with my good dishes. At first, the conversation was a bit stilted. We were all being very careful not to say anything that might trigger conflict or hurt feelings. But gradually, as we talked about Tommy's school, David's work, and Sarah's new job, things began to feel more natural. Then Tommy said something that stopped us all in our tracks. "I want to make a toast." He stood up with his glass of milk, and we all raised our glasses. "I want to toast our family. We're not the same as we used to be, but we're still a family. Mom made mistakes, but she's working hard to fix them. Dad got hurt, but he's trying to forgive. Grandpa lost money, but he still loves us all. And I learned that families can break and still be okay." We all sat there in stunned silence for a moment. Then Sarah started crying. Then David started crying. Then I started crying. "How did you get so wise, little man?" Sarah asked through her tears. "I had good teachers," Tommy said, looking around the table at all of us. That dinner became a monthly tradition, not because we were pretending everything was perfect, but because we were acknowledging that we were still connected, still important to each other, despite everything that had happened. Around this time, Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone. She started volunteering at a local addiction counseling center, helping other people who were struggling with gambling problems. "Why do you want to do that?" I asked her. "Isn't it risky to be around that environment?" "Actually, it's the opposite," she said. "Helping other people remember why recovery matters helps me remember too, and I understand what they're going through in a way that someone who's never had this problem can't." Sarah's volunteer work led to something unexpected. She was asked to speak at schools and community centers about gambling addiction, particularly about online gambling among young adults. The first time she gave a presentation, Tommy asked if he could come listen. "Are you sure you want to hear Mom talk about all that stuff?" David asked. "I want to see her help people," Tommy said simply. So we all went. Sarah stood in front of a room full of high school students and told her story. She was honest about the lies, the stolen money, the danger she put her family in. But she was also honest about recovery, about the daily work of staying healthy, about the possibility of rebuilding trust. Afterward, several students came up to her with questions. Some had parents with gambling problems. Others were concerned about their own online betting. One girl, who couldn't have been more than 16, whispered to Sarah that she'd been hiding her own gambling problem from her family. As we walked to the car, Tommy said, "Mom, you helped that girl, didn't you?" "I hope so. You turned something bad into something good." Sarah stopped walking and knelt down to Tommy's eye level. "You know what, Tommy? You're the one who taught me how to do that." "What do you mean?" "You taught me that making mistakes doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you're a person who can learn and grow and help other people." 8 months after the family dinners began, David made an announcement that shocked us all. "Sarah and I have been talking, and we've decided to try living together again." Tommy's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? We're going to be a real family again." "We're going to try," Sarah said carefully, "but it's going to be different than before. We have rules now and boundaries, and if I ever start gambling again, Dad has the right to take you and leave immediately. And you're okay with that, Mom?" "I'm grateful for it. It means your dad loves us enough to give us another chance, but he loves you enough to protect you if I mess up again." "And if you mess up again?" Sarah looked Tommy directly in the eyes. "Then I'll accept the consequences, and I'll still love you, and I'll still work on getting better." The reunion wasn't a fairy tale. Sarah and David had to relearn how to be married to each other. There were arguments, miscommunications, and moments of doubt, but there were also small victories. Sarah's first full year of sobriety, David's growing ability to trust again, Tommy's consistent happiness and security. 1 year after they moved back in together, I was babysitting Tommy while his parents went to their weekly couples counseling session. He was doing homework at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd put together so many puzzles during the dark months of Sarah's addiction. "Grandpa, can I tell you something?" "Always. I'm proud of our family." "What do you mean?" "We could have just stayed broken, but we all decided to work on being better." I looked at this remarkable child, now 12 years old, who had navigated family crisis with more wisdom than most adults possess. "Tommy, do you ever wish none of this had happened?" He thought about it seriously. "I wish Mom hadn't gotten sick with gambling addiction, and I wish we hadn't had to be scared or move away. But I don't wish we hadn't learned how to forgive each other and how to be honest even when it's hard." "So you think some good came out of all the bad?" "I think we learned that we could go through bad things and still love each other, and that's important to know." That conversation stayed with me for days. This child, who had every right to be angry, resentful, or damaged by what his mother's addiction had put him through, had instead learned profound lessons about resilience, forgiveness, and family. Sometimes the most powerful moments in life happen when you're not expecting them. What Tommy said next taught me something about redemption that I'll never forget, and it's going to change how you think about second chances forever. If you've ever wondered whether people can truly change, or if families can heal from deep wounds, you need to hear this. And if this story has touched your heart so far, please share it with someone who needs hope. 2 years after Sarah completed her rehabilitation, something happened that tested everything we'd learned about forgiveness and recovery. It was a Tuesday evening in March. Sarah was at one of her regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings. David was working late, and I was helping Tommy with a school project about family history. The phone rang. It was Dr. Collins from the clinic where Sarah had been treated. "Mr. Johnson, I'm calling because Sarah listed you as her emergency contact. She's here at the hospital." My heart stopped. "What happened? Did she relapse?" "No, sir. Nothing like that. She was driving home from her meeting when she witnessed a car accident. She stopped to help and ended up pulling a family out of their overturned vehicle before the paramedics arrived. She was injured in the process. Nothing life-threatening, but she has some cuts and bruises and a possible concussion. Is she okay? She's going to be fine. But Mr. Johnson, the family she saved, it was a mother and 2 small children. The mother wanted me to tell you that your daughter is a hero. When I hung up the phone, Tommy was standing next to me. Is Mom hurt? I explained what had happened. Tommy listened quietly, then said something that floored me. Grandpa, Mom really is different now, isn't she? What do you mean? The old Mom, the one who was sick with gambling, she was always thinking about herself and her problems. The new Mom thinks about other people too. He was right. The Sarah who had lied to me about needing money would never have stopped to help strangers in danger. But the Sarah who had worked on herself, who had learned to think beyond her own immediate needs, had risked her own safety to save a family she didn't even know. At the hospital, Sarah was sitting up in bed with a bandaged forehead and scraped arms, but she was alert and talking to a police officer about what she'd witnessed. When she saw Tommy and me, she started crying. "I'm sorry I scared you guys." "Don't be sorry," Tommy said, hugging her carefully. "I'm proud of you for helping those people. The little girl in the car reminded me of you when you were younger," Sarah said. I couldn't drive by." Later that week, the local newspaper ran a story about the accident and Sarah's heroic actions. The headline read, "Local woman saves family from burning vehicle." But what struck me most was a quote from Sarah in the article. "A few years ago, I was so focused on my own problems that I couldn't see anyone else's pain. Recovery isn't just about not gambling. It's about becoming the kind of person who can help others when they need it." The family Sarah saved sent her a thank you card with photos of their children. The mother wrote, "You didn't just save our lives. You restored our faith that there are still good people in the world." Tommy put that card on the refrigerator next to his school artwork and his parents' AAGA anniversary coins. 3 years into Sarah's recovery, she received an unexpected phone call. It was from the FBI agent who had worked on her case. "Mrs. Patterson, I wanted to let you know that the last of the gambling ring operators was sentenced today. Your testimony was crucial to putting all of these people away." "How long did he get?" 15 years. "And I wanted you to know we've identified 43 other victims of this operation. Your courage in coming forward helped protect a lot of other families." That night at dinner, Sarah shared the news with David and Tommy. "So it's really over?" David asked. "The criminal part is over. The recovery part, that's something I'll work on for the rest of my life." "Mom," Tommy said, "do you think any of those other 43 people have kids like me?" "Probably. And did their kids have to learn about forgiveness too?" "I imagine so." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "I hope they learned it as well as we did. 4 years after that terrible night, when I first discovered Sarah's lies, we were all gathered in my backyard for Tommy's 13th birthday party. It was a small celebration, just family and a few of Tommy's closest friends. As I watched Sarah laughing with the other kids, helping David with the barbecue, and looking healthier and happier than I'd seen her since before Margaret died, I felt overwhelming gratitude. Not gratitude for the addiction, I would never be grateful for that, but gratitude for what we'd learned, for how we'd grown, for the fact that we were still a family." Tommy found me standing alone by Margaret's rose garden, thinking, "What are you thinking about, Grandpa?" "I'm thinking about how proud your grandmother would be of all of us, even Mom, especially Mom. Grandma always believed people could change if they worked hard enough at it." "Do you think Mom will ever gamble again?" It was a question I'd wrestled with for years. "I don't know, Tommy. Addiction is tricky, but I know your mom has built a life and relationships that she doesn't want to lose again. And I know she has tools now to help her when things get difficult. And if she does, then we'll love her and help her, but we'll also protect ourselves. That's what families do." Tommy nodded. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Always. Sometimes I'm glad all this happened." I was shocked, really. Not glad that Mom got sick, and not glad that we were scared or that you lost money, but glad that we learned how strong we are and how much we really love each other. Looking at this wise, compassionate 13-year-old, I realized that he had learned something that many adults never learn, that the worst things that happen to us can also teach us the most important lessons about life, love, and resilience. You know what, Tommy? I think I'm glad too. Here we are at the end of this incredible journey, and I want you to know that what Tommy taught me about forgiveness in those final moments changed not just our family, but everyone who has heard this story. If you've made it this far, you're about to hear the most powerful lesson of all. And if you're struggling with addiction in your family, betrayal, or wondering if people really can change, this ending will give you hope in ways you never imagined. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because stories like this remind us all of what's possible when we choose love over anger. 5 years after Sarah's recovery began, Tommy was in 8th grade and starting to think about high school. He was a confident, thoughtful teenager who had turned his early experience with family crisis into a deep empathy for others. One day, he came home from school and announced that he wanted to do his civics project on addiction and family recovery. "Are you sure about that topic?" Sarah asked. "It's pretty personal." "That's exactly why I want to do it, Mom. I think other kids need to know that families can survive addiction and that kids don't have to be ashamed of their parents' problems." What would you include in the project?" "I want to interview all of us about what we learned, and I want to research how many families deal with addiction and what resources are available to help them." Over the next several weeks, Tommy interviewed each of us extensively. When he interviewed me, his questions were more sophisticated than I'd expected. "Grandpa, when you first found out Mom was lying to you, what was the hardest part?" "The hardest part was realizing that my little girl, who I thought I knew completely, was capable of deception I never imagined." "But she was still your little girl, wasn't she?" "Yes, but she was also an adult with a serious illness that was making her do things that weren't really her." "How did you learn to separate Mom from the addiction?" It was a profound question. "It took me a long time to understand that your mom and the addiction were two different things. The addiction made her lie and steal and put us in danger. But underneath that, she was still the daughter I raised, who loved you and your dad and me. And now I see both. I see the person who made terrible mistakes, and I see the person who has worked incredibly hard to make amends and build a better life." When Tommy presented his project to his class, Sarah, David, and I were invited to attend. Tommy stood in front of 25 8th graders and told our story with poise and honesty that left me in awe. "Addiction affects the whole family," he said. "It made my mom lie to people she loved. It made my dad lose trust. It made my grandpa question everything he thought he knew about his daughter. And it made me have to grow up faster than I should have. But," he continued, "recovery also affects the whole family. It made my mom honest and brave. It made my dad more patient and understanding. It made my grandpa more compassionate. And it made me more grateful for the people I love." At the end of his presentation, one of his classmates asked, "Do you ever worry that your mom will start gambling again?" Tommy paused thoughtfully. "Yes, sometimes I do worry about that, but worrying about something that might happen doesn't help anyone. What helps is appreciating what we have now and knowing that we're strong enough to handle whatever comes." Another student asked, "Are you angry at your mom for what she put your family through?" "I was angry for a while, but I learned that holding on to anger just makes you sad and tired. Forgiveness isn't about saying what someone did was okay. It's about not letting what they did keep hurting you." After the presentation, several students came up to Tommy privately. One girl said her father was an alcoholic. A boy mentioned that his older brother had a drug problem. Tommy listened to each of them with the kind of compassion that can only come from experience. That night, as we all had dinner together, now a weekly tradition, Sarah said something that surprised us all. "Tommy, I want to thank you." "For what?" "For forgiving me before I even knew how to forgive myself. For loving me when I wasn't very lovable. For teaching all of us what real strength looks like. Mom, you don't have to thank me for loving you. That's what families do. But you could have been angry and bitter. You could have decided that what I did was unforgivable. Instead, you chose to believe that people can change and grow." "Well," Tommy said with a slight smile, "I had a good example. You changed and grew." Later that evening, after David and Sarah had gone home and Tommy had gone to bed, I sat in my living room thinking about everything that had happened over the past 5 years. I thought about the money I'd lost, money that had taken me decades to save. I thought about the fear we'd experienced, the months of exile in Florida, the uncertainty about whether our family would survive. But I also thought about what we'd gained. Sarah was not only sober, but she had become a person of genuine integrity and service to others. David had learned that love sometimes means setting boundaries and that forgiveness is a choice you make every day. Tommy had developed wisdom and compassion far beyond his years. And me, I had learned that parental love isn't about preventing your children from experiencing consequences. It's about loving them through those consequences and helping them become better people because of what they've learned. The next morning, Tommy found me in the kitchen making coffee, just like I had every morning for over 60 years. "Grandpa, can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you think our family is normal now?" I laughed. "I don't think we were ever normal, Tommy, but I think we're healthy." "What's the difference?" "Normal families don't have big problems. Healthy families learn how to deal with their problems together. So we're a healthy family that went through a big problem. We're a family that became healthier because of how we handled a big problem." Tommy poured himself a glass of orange juice and sat down across from me. "Grandpa, yes, I love our family. All of it, even the hard parts. Why? Because the hard parts taught us how much we love each other." As I watched my grandson finish his juice and get ready for school, I realized that Tommy had learned the most important lesson of all, that love isn't about perfection. It's about commitment. It's about choosing to stay connected to people even when they disappoint you, hurt you, or force you to change your life in ways you never expected. Sarah's gambling addiction nearly destroyed our family, but her recovery, combined with our collective choice to forgive and rebuild, created something stronger than what we'd had before. 6 months ago, Sarah celebrated 5 years of sobriety. At her celebration, Tommy gave a speech that brought everyone to tears. "Mom," he said, "5 years ago, you were sick with an addiction that made you do things that hurt our family. But today, you're healthy and strong and honest. You've helped dozens of other people recover from gambling addiction. You saved a family from a car accident. You testified against criminals who were hurting other families like ours." He paused, looking around the room at all the people who had supported Sarah's recovery. "I want everyone here to know that recovery isn't just about the person who was sick. It's about the whole family learning to be honest, to forgive, to set boundaries, and to love each other better." Then he looked directly at Sarah. "Mom, I'm proud to be your son, not because you recovered from addiction, but because of the person you chose to become while you were recovering." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. As I finished telling you this story, I want you to know that our family still isn't perfect. Sarah still goes to meetings. David still sometimes has moments of doubt. I sometimes worry about money more than I should. And Tommy, now 15, sometimes carries more responsibility than a teenager should have to. But we're real. We're honest with each other. And we know that love isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you choose to do every single day, even when it's hard. Tommy is 15 now, and he's applying to high schools. He wants to study psychology and social work. When I asked him why, he said, "I want to help families like ours learn that they can survive hard things and come out stronger." Last week, Sarah got a call from a woman whose husband has a gambling addiction. The woman was desperate, frightened, and considering leaving him. Sarah spent 2 hours on the phone with her, sharing our story and connecting her with resources. After she hung up, Sarah said to me, "Dad, I can't give back the years I lost to addiction, and I can't undo the pain I caused. But maybe I can help other families avoid some of the mistakes we made." "What mistakes?" I asked. "Waiting so long to get help, being ashamed to tell the truth, thinking that love means enabling someone's destructive behavior." "And what did we do right?" Sarah thought for a moment. "We never gave up on each other, even when giving up would have been easier." If you're watching this and your family is dealing with addiction, I want you to know several things. First, addiction is a disease, not a moral failing. The person you love is still in there, even when their behavior doesn't reflect that. Second, helping someone doesn't mean protecting them from consequences. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone experience the results of their choices. Third, recovery is possible, but it takes work from everyone involved. The addicted person has to commit to getting healthy, but the family has to commit to learning new ways of loving and communicating. Fourth, forgiveness is not the same as trust. You can forgive someone and still require them to earn back your trust through consistent actions over time. And finally, children are more resilient and wise than we give them credit for. Tommy taught all of us that healing is possible when you choose love over resentment. I'm 67 now, Sarah has been sober for 5.5 years. David and Sarah renewed their wedding vows last year, not because their marriage is perfect, but because they've learned how to be married to each other honestly. Tommy is a remarkable young man who uses his experience to help other kids dealing with family addiction. And me, I've learned that being a parent doesn't end when your child becomes an adult. It just changes form. Sometimes you have to love them by saying no. Sometimes you have to love them by stepping back. And sometimes you have to love them by believing in their capacity to change, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. Margaret would have been proud of all of us, I think. Not because we avoided hardship, but because we faced it together and came out more connected, more honest, and more compassionate than we were before. The money Sarah lost is gone forever. But what we gained in understanding, in strength, in appreciation for each other, is worth more than any bank account. 3 months ago, Tommy asked me a question that I keep thinking about. Grandpa, if you could go back in time and prevent Mom from ever developing a gambling addiction, would you? I thought about it for a long time before answering. I would prevent the pain it caused and the fear and the financial loss, but I wouldn't want to lose what we learned about love and forgiveness and resilience. So you're glad it happened? I'm glad we survived it. I'm glad we learned from it. And I'm glad it taught us that our love for each other is stronger than any problem we might face. Tommy smiled. Me too, Grandpa. Me too. If this story has touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you're dealing with addiction in your family, know that recovery is possible and that you're not alone. And if you've learned something about forgiveness, love, or resilience from our story, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Remember, we're planning that special giveaway I mentioned at the beginning when we reach our subscriber goal. The best comments sharing your own experiences with family challenges, forgiveness, or recovery will receive special prizes. Your stories matter, and sharing them helps other families know they can survive and even thrive after crisis. Subscribe to this channel because we'll continue sharing real stories about real families facing real challenges and finding real hope. And remember, no matter what your family is going through, love, honesty, and commitment can help you get through it together. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for caring about families like ours. And thank you for believing, like Tommy taught us to believe, that people can change, families can heal, and love really can conquer all. The end of this story isn't really an ending, it's a beginning. A beginning of a family that learned how to love each other better because of what they survived together. And that's the kind of love that lasts forever.